I'm 84 years old, and the truth is I waited too long to say, "I'm sorry, son." It feels strange to begin a story with a confession instead of a greeting. At my age, greetings are cheap and time is expensive. I measure life now not by birthdays, but by the number of mornings I wake up, amazed that the coffee still smells the same, that my hands still remember where the cup is, and that somewhere out there, maybe halfway across the country, my boy still carries my name. You'd think after 8 decades a man would learn how to say 2 simple words: "I'm sorry." But pride sits heavy in men like me, built from the iron years of the 1950s when fathers didn't cry and sons were expected to obey. I grew up in a house where silence was discipline and apologies were for children or drunks. My own father never said he was sorry for anything, not even the time his backhand left a bruise and a lesson about keeping my mouth shut. So I inherited that tradition like a family heirloom, polishing it with stubbornness and passing it on without meaning to. My son Thomas was born in 1967, a spring baby with lungs that could rival a trumpet. I remember holding him, tiny, red-faced, furious at the world, and thinking that nothing so small should have so much power over me. But then work called. Work always called. I was an engine mechanic, long shifts at the plant, oil under my nails, the smell of diesel becoming part of my skin. When I came home, exhaustion dressed itself up as respectability. I'd say I was too tired to talk, too tired to play catch, too tired to listen, and somehow that became the rhythm of his childhood. A man too tired to love out loud and a boy who learned to stop asking for it. He was a quiet kid, the kind that built whole worlds out of model airplanes and sketchbooks. His mother used to tell me, "He's sensitive," and I thought she meant weak. I'd grumble that boys needed toughening up, not gentle words and colored pencils. I pushed him towards sports, toward noise, toward the shape of what I thought a man should be. He pushed back in small ways, drawing comic strips at the kitchen table, wearing headphones instead of helmets, hiding report cards that praised art instead of arithmetic. I mistook his silence for stubbornness, when it was really the bruising quiet of disappointment. The first big crack between us came when he was 16. He told me he wanted to go to art school, and I laughed, an ugly, dismissive sound that filled the kitchen like smoke. "Artists don't pay the rent," I said. "Get your head out of the clouds." He looked at me like a stranger, his eyes older than his years, and said, "You don't even know me, Dad." I told him to watch his tone. He walked out, and the screen door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture of our wedding on the wall. I could still hear it shaking when I muttered to my wife that he'd come around. But he didn't. Not for a long time. Thomas left for college on a scholarship I didn't deserve to claim pride in. And from then on our relationship became a series of missed calls disguised as voicemails. I'd phone him after a beer or two, pretending it was casual, and hang up before the beep. When he did call back, I'd answer with small talk about car engines or sports scores. Anything but feelings. The year started stacking like unopened letters. He married a woman named Carla. I sent a card. They had a daughter. I sent a check. Each gesture felt like currency exchange for closeness I couldn't earn. My wife used to say, "Write to him, tell him what you mean." But I was still playing the role of the unbending father, the man with all the answers. Then she got sick, breast cancer, fragile but fierce fight, and in her final months she tried again to bridge us. "Don't let pride outlive me," she whispered in the hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and endings. I promised. Promises built on grief are easy to make and hard to keep. After she passed, the house echoed with her absence and my son's silence. I found refuge in routine. Breakfast at 7, news at 8, tinkering in the garage until the sun lowered enough to remind me that another day had slipped away without a phone call. When I turned 70, a heart attack reminded me that time isn't polite. It doesn't warn before it steals. Lying in that hospital bed, tubes in places no man wants tubes, I kept thinking about Thomas. I pictured him as a child with paint on his fingers, showing me a drawing I barely looked at. The memory burned more than the chest wound. So when the doctor said I could go home, I told myself I'd call him. I even wrote down what I'd say. "Hello, son. It's your old man. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel small. I'm proud of who you became." That little note sat on my nightstand for 6 years. I called him once, and hung up after hearing his voicemail, terrified he'd answer, and I'd forget the words. Fear, I've learned, doesn't fade with age. It just changes disguise. Mine wore the face of dignity. I attended my granddaughter's high school graduation through an online live stream. Imagine that, learning to use a computer just to see faces that looked like mine but didn't know me. I watched her hug her father, my son, and saw in that moment the man he became without my guidance, steady, kind, appreciative of art and people, and things I once called useless. That's when the realization hit. Not with drama, just the quiet ache of truth. That apologies aren't a sign of weakness, but a declaration of love. The real cowardice is silence. So one autumn morning, when the clouds looked like cigarette smoke over the neighborhood, I decided to write him a letter the old-fashioned way. Pen and paper, my handwriting shaky but still mine. I told him everything, how sorry I was for the laughter that wounded, for the distance I built like a wall, for the years I measured worth by paychecks instead of presents. I even told him something I'd never said out loud, that I envied his courage to be different, to live a life colored by art instead of grace. I mailed it before I could change my mind. Weeks passed, nothing. I convinced myself maybe it got lost or maybe he read it and couldn't trust it. Both possibilities hurt in different keys. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. I recognized his handwriting immediately. Steady, clean, unpretentious, just like his mother's. It wasn't long, a page and a half. He wrote that he'd gotten my letter and had cried, which surprised him. He said he'd spent years trying not to be angry but didn't know how to stop missing the father he wished he'd had. And then, "I forgive you, Dad. I think I finally understand you were doing the best you could with what you knew. Let's start from here." I read that line, a simple mercy, and wept so hard I had to sit down on the porch steps. 8 decades of pride melted faster than a spring frost. It's strange, after a lifetime of mechanical problems, the hardest repair I ever made didn't need any tools, just honesty. That evening we spoke on the phone. His voice sounded older, but the boy I loved was still threaded through it. We talked for hours, mostly about the things between the cracks. His daughter's art exhibition, my late wife's garden, the smell of rain on asphalt. Near the end he said, "I used to think we'd never talk like this," and I told him, "Me too, son. Me too." Since then we call every Sunday. Not every talk is profound, not every silence comfortable. But each one is a patch in the old quilt of our relationship. The first time he visited, I stood on the porch holding my walker like a shield, afraid I'd choke. But when he hugged me, careful, mindful of my frailty, I felt like a man reborn. He still paints, by the way. He even made a portrait of me sitting here in this very chair, sunlight on my face. It hangs in his studio. He told me to remind himself that forgiveness looks like time reclaimed. Looking back, I understand that fatherhood isn't a series of lessons you deliver. It's a conversation you keep alive. I treated it like an exam I had to pass, rigid and unforgiving, and in the process I forgot that love isn't about performance but presence. So listen, anyone hearing this, especially the men of my generation, the ones who still think emotion is something you sweep under the rug like dust, don't wait until you're counting the stretch marks of time on your hands to say what matters. Don't assume the people you love already know. Say the words, write the letter, pick up the phone. It doesn't matter if your voice shakes or your sentences stumble. The words don't have to be poetic, they just have to be yours. If stubbornness built the distance, humility can bridge it. And if fear tells you it's too late, remember this old fool at 84 who finally stopped listening to fear. You'd be surprised how forgiving life can be when you meet it halfway. When my granddaughter visited last summer, she brought a canvas and asked me to dip my finger in blue paint and press it on the corner. "For memory," she said. "That small print sits beneath my son's signature. 2 generations sealed together by art, the very thing I once tried to crush." So that's my story, an old man and a late apology. I don't tell it for pity or redemption, just as proof that even worn-out hearts can mend. The past doesn't vanish when you say you're sorry. It softens, it loosens its grip. These days, when the evening sun hits the porch railing just right, I imagine my wife smiling, proud that I finally kept my promise. I still keep her picture on the nightstand beside that faded note I'd written years ago, the one that began, "Hello, son." I never threw it away. Maybe it's there to remind me how long it can take to speak the truth, or maybe it's there so I won't forget that time, for all its cruelty. Offers second chances to those who dare to ask for them. And if you're still wondering whether to reach out to someone you've hurt, let me save you the suspense and do it. Speak before the quiet wins. Because there's a moment, the one just before you say "I'm sorry," when the world seems to hold its breath, waiting to see which way you'll turn. Take the good road, and may the silence between hearts shrink, while you still have the breath to say the words that matter most.